Good afternoon, and welcome to another lackluster episode of Diatribes from the Voice of Doom. And now here's your vapid and visceral host, Voice of Doom. Hello. I'm gonna just rant on in the usual fashion. No particular subject. I wanted to talk about some of the events that I saw on the news. And one of them has to do with a shooting in, I believe, Texas. I don't know all the details. 3 police officers gunned down, 1 killed, and 2 apparently in not good shape. And gunned down, and obviously ambushed, which was going to be a sign of the end times, according to certain religious denominations who look at what's going on as, the revelation and Armageddon and the apocalypse. Now, the 3 officers I noticed were of the same complexion, which really shouldn't make any difference. But I find it interesting that it's kind of, according to the current mode of thinking, they're obviously white supremacists, and they're just lackeys for the system. They're lackeys for the systemic dominance of the white race by becoming police officers. It has nothing to do with them wanting a career or wanting to help or wanting to make a difference in society. It has to do with them being lackeys, and they paid for it. Now, whether they find the person or people who did this or not, and I know there's a camaraderie and a fraternity amongst enforcers of the law that they don't take these kind of things laying down. They really seriously don't want cop shooters to go free or to do it with impunity. And they take it personally, and I understand that. Now, when they find these people or persons, it's going to be interesting to see exactly what the dynamics turn out to be. Because most of the time, it would be 3 law enforcement officers of any stripe, color, creed, shooting an innocent person of color, and that would start a brouhaha. Now, if it's the other way around, we'll see what happens. We have many different scenarios. The shooter could be a inner city urbanite who just has it in for cops of any kind. It could be a white supremacist who can't stand the idea of being bossed around by somebody who's not white. It could be, I'm sure they're hoping it would be a MAGA hat wearer, because that would at least fit into something that they could rage about, endlessly. Whereas right now it's kind of, it's not a big news item. It should be, but it's not. It's a side item. But it will be a big item if it turns out that a flag-waving Viking did the shooting. Now, it could be someone who shouldn't be in the United States if you look at the legal laws, the laws on the books. A person who got here through various means other than the proper channels of how to migrate to America. Now, if that's the case, then we're going to have a big problem, because many, many, many people will be enraged And it won't matter what color or what city or whether they're in the boondocks or if they're on the plains or if they're in the bayou, it doesn't matter. They're going to be enraged. And these things are going to start happening. And people will be enraged. So I will pay tribute, and I hope for the best for them. I know that the officer that was murdered had a small child, about 2, and a newborn child of a few months old now. You know, another tragedy that I find hard to think about because I could only imagine if I had 2 small kids and something tragic happened. And I wouldn't want to see that happen. And I hate seeing that happen. So I hope for the best, and I hope they find the person or people who did it, and I hope that they give them the full dose of the long arm of the law and swift and harsh judgment and punishment. But it all depends on who did it, and then we'll see. Now, how does that tie in with everything else? Well, I was going to kind of ramble on about people right now. We're very much into trying to circumvent the last, and I mean last, president from running again. And if he does run, he better not win. But I keep on telling people that the odds of there being an election in 2022 are very slim, and 2024 is out of the question. I don't see it happening. And the reason it's not going to happen is because even if things go the way they go now and we don't completely destroy ourselves, and if the conflagration does not come in 2022, which it will, the side that's in charge now is not going to want to give up. They're not going to want to relinquish their power. They're certainly not going to do it through some silly election process unless they can somehow rig it completely to their favor, which they can do, of course. We've seen it. And that's the big lie that everybody's expounding, that is circumventing the last president, and I mean last, from getting a foothold again, because they are bound and determined to prove that he is an insurrectionist. And no matter what he said, it could be taken out of context. But I don't think he holed himself up in the Oval Office and held everybody at bay with some sort of a firearm. So he left the country in reasonably good shape. It was on its way back to coming back. And everything that Petri Dish has done has made it awful. And I realize what his master plan is, and maybe he's not senile, maybe he's not demented, maybe he doesn't have irreparable brain damage that can never be fixed, because he might be playing dumb, and he might actually be kind of a genius, because it occurred to me that the only way to build something back better is to break it first and to ruin it first. Then you can build it back better. So since he already had kind of a situation handed to him where things were going on a reasonably good course, considering what we went through in 2020, there was the vaccine, which is saving lives everywhere, except for Colin Powell's. And there is a border that was secure, and actually Mexico was doing better, and they were forced to keep those people, and they didn't want to, so they cut off the flow, because they can't say, well, we'll keep them all until America deals with them. And Mexico was actually doing better under the last, and I mean final president. I know for a fact that they were doing better. Now, I don't know how they're doing now with people wandering through willy-nilly, and they're assuming that they will just be passed through the turnstile at the border, which isn't there anymore. So I guess they're letting people go through, but it's got to be anarchy because the cartel runs the border. And that's not good because when you have a multi-billionaire criminal enterprise running a major thoroughfare between two countries, there's not going to be good things happening. So I guess the latest thing I heard a few minutes ago is they're flying kids all through the country in the middle of the night, flying them from the border to whatever city they see fit. And all of them seem to have parents and relatives in the United States. So all these, I don't know, the parents came up and then the kids sneak in later. Come on, let's get with it. It's a big mess. And to have a pretext to tout a $3.5 trillion infrastructure bill, which contains no infrastructure, because you already have a $1.5 trillion infrastructure bill that's been kind of agreed to, but you know, the 3.5 has to do with the infrastructure of the human species, the human behavior, and how they're going to, you know, take over the country. Now, in order to justify a infrastructure bill of that size, you have to destroy the infrastructure. You see how bad it is now? You see how bad the infrastructure is? We got to do something about it. Well, you destroyed it. Well, no, it was going to happen anyway with the last, and I mean last, president. And we are crawling our way out of the mess that he created. And I still hear Freckles, the little redhead girl, you know, touting their accomplishments. And it's like, you know, you are in a different universe, at least from me, maybe not from you guys. Maybe you guys can look at her and go, yeah, things are going well. Yeah, the only reason that things are doubling in price is because people have so much money, and the only reason there's so many barges stuck in the thing is that we ordered so much stuff because we're such a prosperous country, and we ordered too much, and now it's sitting there, it can't even get off the barges. We ordered so much because we're so rich and everybody's doing so well. That's what she's saying. I mean, if you listen to her, so, okay, I'll take it. Now, I told you that they're not going to have an election. The Democrats won't allow an election, and if they do allow one, it's going to be so corrupt, they're going to have to keep the viruses going so that they have a reason to have ballots everywhere, because we know in 2020 they were everywhere. I had like 15 on my table, empty ballots from various places for whatever reason, which I didn't ask for. And I went out and stood in line and voted in a long line because I wanted my vote to at least be somewhat, you know, secure, not a bunch of ballots. They're not going to have an election. Now, 2024 is out because by 2024, and I hate to break this news to you, I really do, but it's the reason that they're getting all these people into the United States from everywhere. And they can have anything. They can have bombs. They can have fentanyl. They can have slaves. They can have little girls. They can have anything they want to and come over the border. Anything. They can have polio. They can have leprosy. They can have Ebola. They can have Delta, Epsilon, Mu, or Omega. They could have Nipah. It doesn't really matter what they have. Those people who are letting them in don't care. They just want to get them in and get them integrated. And not integrated like desegregated, but integrated into the United States so that we remain in an emergency situation so that they can have their pretext for mucking up the election in 2022, which won't happen. Because here's the bad news, and I hate to be the one to tell you, but by the end of the year, 2022, 200 million people in America will no longer be with us. 200 million, okay? And the reasons are obvious, and I've given you every reason why, every reason. And I'll say Xi, I'll say Nipa, and I will say 180 more variants. And I will say that they know it's going to happen, and that's why they don't care who comes in the United States. They're going to replace them with refugees. De-Americanization, you go back. Refugees replace American citizens. Refugees get a stipend from the government. They get a refugee grant. So they get free money. They are socialists when they come over the border in their ship. They're socialists immediately because our government has to take care of them. Now, 200 million people are going to die. It doesn't matter if they're illegal, legal, American citizens, old people, children, teenagers, everybody. So that's a pleasant subject. I probably didn't scare you because you think I'm full of it, but you watch what happens. And then don't blame me either. Don't say it was all my fault just because I said it before everybody else. And when it does happen, those news people are going to be having a cow. And they won't even have a job because we're talking about pure, unadulterated anarchy down to the core, the visceral anarchy. So they won't have a job, they won't have a platform, and they'll be just as scared as everybody else. I'm sorry for them because they really think they have a lofty position being able to report their opinion about what's going on and do nothing, and nobody's going to do a damn thing about it. Nobody. Nobody will do anything, and these diatribes are getting longer, and I didn't even say anything except the big stuff. So, I will chant for those police officers, and I know they were trying their best, and it seems like the good people always get it. So we'll talk more about this subject later, and have a good evening.